Hello everyone, I am the Desert Gardener, and this is going to be my first installment in my series of how to grow tomatoes and peppers in the desert. Now this first video is going to be all about supplies, things that I think you should purchase prior to planting even your first seed. So this is mostly going to be a beginner's guide. If you've been growing for a while, you may not get too much out of it, but just to be sure, I've put a PDF file or a link to a PDF file down below. It'll look a little like this. You can download it to your computer. It's going to have a list of everything I'm going to talk about, and you can see if there's anything on there that maybe you're not using and maybe you should. And next to each item there's going to be a brief description as well as a link that goes to an Amazon page where you can get more information on that item. Now I'm just going to go over each one really quickly, and I'll be going over them in much more detail in later videos when it comes time to actually use them. But these are things that I think you should purchase prior to planting. So the first one is simple: seeds. Now obvious, that's going to be your most important thing, but where should you get your seeds? Well, the seed catalogs have quite a variety, but they're pretty expensive, so I don't like to use them. These little seed packages that you get at your home stores and things like that, I think work very well. If you want something that's a little bit more unusual, I usually go to eBay. I can usually find a lot of people selling seeds there. In fact, I myself sell a few types of seeds on eBay. But what type of seeds should you get? Well, when it comes to tomatoes, you should definitely stick with cherry tomatoes. They grow best in the desert. The smaller the tomato, the better. I really love these little space saver tomatoes. Any type of cherry tomatoes. I really love the black cherry tomatoes. I think they have the best taste, but anything small is going to work and grow very well in the desert. The larger the tomato you get, the more trouble you're going to have in the heat of the desert. So, but if you really want something a little larger, the Best Boys and the Early Girl tomatoes work pretty well. There's also some larger ones that are meant to work well in the heat, like the Arkansas Traveler and the Solar Flare, but I really don't recommend them. Stick with the smaller ones, the cherry tomatoes. They'll give you quite a few and they grow very well. And the same goes for the peppers. Avoid the large bell peppers. They just simply don't grow very well in the desert. Too many things can go wrong. Stick with the smaller peppers, especially banana peppers grow very well. Cherry peppers grow very well. Smaller peppers like that. So let's get to the next thing. Now you're going to need some grow lights. Now I really like the Jumpstart grow light system. Now you can use any grow light you like. There's not a huge difference between them. You can get even the cheapy ones work very well. I like the grow light system or the Jumpstart systems because it comes with a stand that makes it very easy. You don't have to drill any holes or, hang things from the ceiling or anything like that. The stand makes it very easy to put together and use. Also, we're going to be using the stand later to make a little tent to keep your pepper seeds warm, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. So you're also going to need a timer, like this guy here. I definitely recommend the one that has 2 inputs or 2 plugs to them. That way you can plug in 2 grow lights at once and have them start at the exact same time. Otherwise you're going to need a little power strip. The next thing is some seed starting trays. I of course have one here. It comes with 3 pieces. The bottom, the 72 tray cell, and a dome lid. Now you can get these pretty much anywhere, but they really are quite important when you're starting your seeds indoors with the grow lights. The next thing is seed starting mix. Obviously you're going to need a seed starting mix to go in these trays. Now you shouldn't use potting soil or garden soil. You really need a seed starting mix, and I like this one here, the Jiffy Mix. It's affordable, it's easy to find, it works very well. And the next thing are some microgreen trays. Now that's actually the white tray I have underneath here. I would recommend getting a couple of these. The main purpose for these is once your plants get a little larger, we have to transplant them into cups. And having a place to put them It'll fit, I think, 18 cups, and then you can transport these back and forth from your grow lights to outdoors, because you're going to need to do a hardening off process. And again, I'm going to just go through all of these things in much more detail in later videos. This is just to let you know about each product. So the next one is heat mats. Now you're definitely going to need a heat mat. It goes underneath the trays I just showed you earlier. Helps keep those seedlings warm. It's very important, especially with the peppers, that they stay warm. Otherwise, if it's not warm enough, they simply are not going to germinate. The next thing is a thermometer. In fact, the next 3 things are all going to be for peppers. We're going to be soaking our pepper seeds prior to planting, and that's where this comes in here. I have a coffee mug warmer, a coffee mug with a lid, and a thermostat. This is going to help us soak the seeds in a diluted tea solution and keep it at the proper temperature. Now, you can use any mug, but make sure that when you get the coffee mug warmer, there are a few different types. There are types that have a thermometer or a temperature gauge on them. The type like this one here that just have a high-low setting, those work good too. But there are a lot of them that have no temperature setting at all. You definitely want to avoid those, because those will be too hot and you're going to cook the seeds. We don't want to do that. We just want to keep them warm for a 24-hour period and before we plant them. So the next one is, an emergency blanket. Now that's this one here. Now this is sort of a tinfoil type blanket. The idea is you take it out and it unfolds and you put it over people who are injured so they don't go into shock. But the idea here is we're going to drape this over the top of our Jumpstart grow light system. This creates a tent to help keep our seeds and seedlings warm. Now this is very important for our peppers. If you're just growing tomatoes and other things, you do not have to do this. But if you're growing peppers, you definitely do. We need to keep them much warmer. Now, if you run your thermostat all day long, you may not need this, but I simply can't afford that. That's going to get really expensive. And this is a very cheap way to keep those pepper seedlings warm. I only paid a couple of bucks for this. The next one is the solo cups, which we already talked about. The next one is a fan. Now, once your seedlings get bigger and we take the lid off our seedling trays, we're going to want to put a fan on those seedlings for a couple of hours each day. This helps avoid mold and mildew growing. It also helps strengthen the stem of the seedlings. And this is very important, because once you put them outdoors, if you don't, they're going to be very, very floppy, and you're going to have to stake them all. So putting a fan on them really helps strengthen the stems and will help much more later. Okay, and then of course we're going to need some potting soil. Once we start putting them into cups and containers, we're going to need a good quality potting soil. So what sort of potting soil should you get? There are a lot of different kinds. Unfortunately, most of them are pretty much just ground hardwood, and they don't hold water very well, so the water will just drain out the bottom. So you want to find a potting soil that has a lot of peat moss. This helps hold the water in. You also want to make sure that it has some perlite in it, because this helps hold a little bit of water in, but it also helps it drain better. So what I usually do is I'll find a potting soil that has a good amount of peat moss, and then I buy perlite separately and add that. That seems to make the best mix. The next one is you'll want some garden labels. You can use pretty much anything. I use popsicle sticks. I like to write the name of what I'm planting and put those in the cups. That way I can keep track of what each item is. But you can use anything. Now, compost. Now, when we plant our tomatoes in our garden, right before we plant, we're going to amend the soil with compost. So you can go to any home store, pick up a few bags of compost, spread it out. You're going to want to put at least an inch or so on the top of the soil and then dig it in real good just before you plant. Next one are tomato cages. Now, we definitely some tomatoes will need more staking than others. The cherry tomatoes don't usually need a whole lot of staking, but if you're growing like an indeterminate variety of tomato, those get very tall. You're definitely going to need some staking or some cages. I also really like the cages because the next thing on the list is going to be shade cloth. And what I do is I put 4 tomato cages in each corner of the garden, and then I drape the shade cloth over the top of it and attach it with clothespins. This way the tomatoes will get shade. Now I really like a 60% shade cloth. Here in the desert you really need a high shade. Most people will recommend not going over 30, but those are people that live up north. When you're down here in the desert and it gets to 110 every day in the afternoon, you need to be able to shade those tomatoes. So a 60% shade cloth and at least 4 tomato cages in each corner. Now I have my garden separated in a couple of parts, so I have to have 4 in this part and 4 in this part, depending on how big they are. So you'll have to decide what your garden looks like and how many you need. The next is grow bags. So I have a grow bag here. Now I really love these. We're going to be planting all of our peppers in grow bags. I don't like the plastic pots. They can hold in heat. Also, when the roots get to the edge of the pot, they have a tendency to turn and then start wrapping around in a circle. That doesn't happen with the grow bags because they'll get to the edge and they'll try to come through the felt, and then they'll feel the air and they'll do what's called air pruning, and the root will stop and the plant will create a new root. So you end up with a much better root system when you're in a container like this. Now this is a 2-gallon. I really recommend 3 gallons for peppers. The reason being is we put everything in grow bags is because we're going to need to move them around. Peppers are much more sensitive to too much sunlight. A little shade cloth is okay with the tomatoes, but for peppers we're going to need to be able to pick them up and move them into the shade. I have mine in a place where they'll just get a few hours of direct sunlight in the morning and then full shade the rest of the day. They just simply can't handle full sun. And the containers are really easy to pick up and move around. And they're pretty affordable, and you can use them year after year. And the next one are, the saucers. And these things are pretty cheap. The reason I like these is if for any reason we need to move our containers indoors, we can put it on the saucer, bring them indoors. If there's a really heavy rainstorm or something and we need to get them out of the rain, or if we're planning on overwintering. The tomatoes, once the end of the year comes, we just simply rip them out and plant anew. But with the peppers, we can give them a good trimming and put them on a saucer and bring the pepper varieties that we like the best indoors, overwinter them, bring them out next year. So that is the end of our list. So like I said, the link to the PDF file for my list is down in the description. So you can either just download it to your computer, or you can print them out and use it like a little checklist as you're doing your different shopping. And like I said, there's a link next to each one that'll go to an Amazon link, so you can get more information and even purchase it through that link. And if you do, I get a small kickback. I think it's like $1. So that'll really help me out. All right, I'll see you on the next one. January 1st, we're going to be planting.